What's up, guys? Leyton here for UFC Gambling Addicts. The giveaway is available. To enter the giveaway, you have to be a subscriber, like the breakdown, and then you have to give me 5 guys or girls who are going to win on the night, method, and round. And your 5th pick must be the main event. Appreciate you all. Enjoy the breakdown.
And welcome to episode 32 of UFC Addicts. My name is Aaron, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host Leyton, and we are here to break down UFC Fight Night 153, Gustafsson versus Smith. That is Anthony Smith versus Alexander Gustafsson from Ericsson Globe in Stockholm, Sweden. As always, I'm here with my co-host Leyton. What up, buddy?
You nailed it. You absolutely nailed that. Beautiful.
Thank you.
Where do we start? Kevin Lee?
Let's talk about we'll talk about the last card, which we had a week off and we certainly needed it, going 6 of 12 and 5 of 12 respectively. I did do better, but 6 of 12, not exactly. Yeah, but neither one of us, that's not what we usually anticipate on cards. There's plenty we could talk about from the card, but we'll just stick to the main event. Kevin Lee, disappointing for sure. I was expecting him to be a lot more successful with his wrestling. I was expecting his gas tank to look better. I was expecting his stand-up to have progressed. I was expecting him to actually have, for some reason, I thought he was training elsewhere and would have a different corner. He still had Dewey Cooper in his, I believe it's Dewey Cooper in his corner.
The dreadlocks?
The dreadlock guy who, I don't hear a whole lot of great coaching within fights often when they, kind of peek into the corners. But particularly with him, I just hear a whole lot of like, you got this, dig deep. Come on, bro. Let's do it. Don't quit on me. Like, I just, would prefer, I don't know. I guess I'm doing armchair coaching here, but I just prefer a little more tactics to go with my motivational speaking.
Mm-hmm.
But either way, respect to RDA. The blueprint was there. Kevin could not achieve it. And Kevin appears to be about a round and a half fighter.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts?
My only real concern was not getting a takedown in round 1 and eventually it being a conditioning battle, and that's basically what happened. He didn't get the takedown in round 1. I believe he did hurt RDA with a punch in round 1. But the takedown was never there. RDA just defended pretty much the same way every time, and you even called it at the end of the 3rd round. You said, he's done. He's done. He's going to be done this round, and it's exactly what we saw. So, it's disappointing. I saw a lot of YouTube channels basically fade Kevin Lee, and we probably should have, but we believed in him. He has good wrestling. He is, a decent fighter. But like you said, the blueprint was there and he couldn't follow it. What can you say?
Props to people who faded on that fight. I did not. I really saw much more of a clear path to victory for Kevin. I wasn't using MMA math exactly, but I really had thought about, I get Barboza's not a 170er, but I had looked at that Barboza fight, and Khabib looked good in that Barboza fight. Kevin Lee looked even better in that Barboza fight. So I thought there's a very clear blueprint here. The reasons that Kevin lost his fight against Al, I thought would have been corrected, and I was wrong. So, I admit I'm wrong. I'll learn from that fight moving forward here. Kevin said he's staying at 170. So we'll see how he adjusts here. One thing that I wish I would have maybe thought about a little more is it being RDA's, 5th fight at 170 now?
Yep, I believe so.
Yeah, so, it's as much as we think I won't say we, I'll say as much as I think the adjustment is when a fighter's coming down in weight, I think often going up in weight is as much of an adjustment in a different type of way.
Mm-hmm.
So we think, it's, Kevin's a bigger guy, and he already having cut so much weight. Now he just has to cut a little less weight. Well, maybe that causes him to be a little less sharp, or maybe, also the guy he's fighting doesn't have to cut as much weight. Mm-hmm. He's also fighting at 170. So I could talk about that fight, maybe a little longer than most, as I will admit Kevin Lee, he is and always will be one of my personal favorites. I've picked against him in fights when I've needed to, but this was a fight that I thought that he had the upper hand. I thought I was loving the price, and fair enough. Props to RDA. I don't mean to not talk about the winner as much, but it was more a fight where I felt Kevin lost it, and we were talking during the fight, and I saw it right after that third round. I said it was over. I mean, Kevin could see it, and RDA could too. So
yeah, it's fair play. I mean, RDA, he's been handed wrestler after wrestler, and Colby and Usman done the job. But the most disappointing thing for me was that he couldn't get that takedown. Kevin Lee is very strong, and just the fact he was failing attempt after attempt after attempt to get RDA to the mat, and when he did kind of get him to his knees, RDA just popped straight back. Kevin took his back like maybe once early on, but like we say, credit to RDA. Kevin Lee just disappointing. Probably gets a 3-round fight in his next fight, which is probably a winnable fight. You'd like to think.
We'll see. But we're moving on. I definitely appreciate the week off. We're going to get this recording up a little bit earlier than usual, so expect 1 or 2 of these fights to be canceled or switched around. I just found out before getting on here that Fabinski and the newcomer Sergey Honda Gonsak or Kondosko. Okay, anyways, I should have said Sergey, but the newcomer from Russia, I was really looking forward to that fight, and that fight got canceled. So Babinski withdrew, so we'll see if there's a replacement as of now of our recording. There isn't. There is a little MMA at least with the PFL tonight, so I'll be checking that out and betting on those fights. But you are here for the UFC breakdown of the fight night from Stockholm, so let's jump in. Why don't we?
Let's do it.
All right, we're at 155 to start between the newcomer Danilo Caterpillar. I apologize for all the European names here. I'll give it my best, but Belluardo. He's the newcomer from Italy, and Danilo will be facing off against Joel Alvarez. And I'll be breaking down Danilo, who is 12-3 with 6 TKOs, 3 submissions. The records of his last 4 opponents, which is something I'm going to start doing for newcomers more often, so I apologize if it gets repetitive, but I found myself looking at it more and more. But the record of the last 4 opponents he's faced have been, all of which have been wins, by the way, have been 15-8, 5-6, 6-6, and 8-11. So his most recent fight was the fight I mentioned first, 15-8. So not the greatest competition there, but he's in here. He's on a 6-fight winning streak. Most of his fights have been in Italian organizations like Venator, not Bellator, but Venator.
I see what I've done there.
Yeah, so it's kind of hard to say how good the competition is he's facing. I think he's definitely, or not, I know he's going to be the shorter guy against Alvarez, who in his debut, you really saw the length on the guy, and he's a tall 155er, and he's not super skinny either. He's just a big 155er in general. In Danilo's last fight, he used a lot of clinching and grappling. He got a decision win. By the third, he had appeared to gas himself and began getting out-grappled by his opponent, who he was out-grappling early on in the fight. Didn't seem like the sharpest. And I can remember from some of my research on Alvarez from the previous card, he really looks for his opponent to initiate the grappling, and then he looks for the subs from there. And I think that Danilo may be falling right into that trap here, especially as he gets tired. He really goes right for the grappling. So I definitely think that Alvarez has the matchup advantage. Honestly, I saw him struggle to keep his opponent off of him. I saw him get mounted and pounded out inside of 2 minutes in one of his losses. So I think Alvarez is going to note this and take a similar approach, and I think Alvarez wins by submission in round 1. But I don't think that Danilo is going to love this matchup, and I think Alvarez gets his first win.
Nice. Okay, so Joel Alvarez comes into this fight 0-1 inside the UFC, 15-2 as a pro. You were speaking a little bit about his debut, which was against Ismagulov. Looking at that fight as a whole, Joel Alvarez wasn't that impressive in that fight, but looking at it, you can kind of take confidence from that fight if you're Joel Alvarez. Ismagulov is a very well-rounded guy. He's a great point fighter. And Joel Alvarez was, a little bit inactive. Obviously a massive step up in competition. You're pretty much right. Previous to that debut, Joel Alvarez's opponents looked to grapple, and Alvarez would take advantage of that, whether it be a sub or pounding him out via ground and pound. Looking at the debut, he wasn't impressive, but he definitely hung in there for 15 minutes, quite inactive, but I'd say he can definitely take confidence from that debut. Your breakdown was pretty much spot on. I'm going to agree with you. I'm going to take Alvarez via decision.
Okay, fair enough. I think that this is much more the type of opponent Alvarez and is used to fighting. And I looked through some of Danilo's more recent opponents and did not see too many guys who are 6 foot plus in length, or 6 foot plus in height. So I believe Alvarez is what, 6'1"?
About that.
Yeah, I believe it. And his arms look really long. I think that's how he syncs up a lot of his submissions, particularly chokes. So, yeah, I'll take Alvarez. He is the favorite, minus 140. So Danilo getting some respect at plus 120. But
that sounds
we'll see.
Fair. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we'll see how the newcomer responds. But I think we'll see how much homework he does, and he could fall into Joel's trap of initiating the grappling and then having some trouble. So,
yep.
You want to lead us into the next one?
Yes. Okay, so we have Devin Clark versus Darko Stosic. And I'll be breaking down... Who am I breaking down here? Darko Stosic. 1-0 inside the UFC. I was actually at his debut, which was in Germany against Jeremy Kimbo, I believe.
Yep. Jeremy Kimball, longer with the UFC.
That's the one. Yeah. The fight didn't last too long. It was over in the first round. Jeremy shot and Darko ended up on top and basically rained down with heavy elbows, hammer fists, and just finished the fight. We don't know too much about Darko other than he's a very powerful 205er. But, pretty much every 205er is pretty powerful. Looking at this fight, I feel Darko could finish Devin Clark in the first round or at any point, really. But if you don't really want to go into the third round with a guy like Devin Clark. Like, former 185er, he has a different pace at 205. He's looking to clinch you, put you up against the fence, shoot, look for takedowns. If you're picking Stosic, you're pretty much banking on Devin Clark not being able to take that shot. If you're picking Devin Clark, you're pretty much banking on Devin being able to get out of the first round, use his takedowns and clinch a lot. It's a tough pick, but I'm going to take Devin Clark. I feel like at 205, he's proven enough to me for me to take him in this fight. Even in his loss recently to Rakic, he came out and he dropped Rakic in a second. He's got massive, massive legs. And I think if he's able to use his grappling and just get a hold of Darko, he could make it a long night for Stosic. So for those reasons, I'm going to take Devin Clark via decision.
Okay. Yeah, so basically the question is who's going to be able to take whose shot in two different shots here, as in the takedown shot or the shot from the strikes with Darko. So exactly. I'll be breaking down Devin Brown Bear Clark. I believe still fighting out Jackson Winklejohn, which isn't the camp he used to be, but still is a decent camp. He's 9-3 with 3-3 record in the UFC. No super notable wins there. And he has a KO loss to Alex Nicholson. He has a rear naked choke loss to Jan Blachowicz. So, he's kind of just an average light heavyweight. Looks to wrestle for the most part. He's not overly huge. He was going to face the Russian Hulk, who appeared to be a really hard hitter. And now he's facing another hard hitter in Darko. Clark, one of the things about Clark being a former 185er is he's a little undersized for a division, but does allow for a good gas tank. But I think sometimes with these harder hitters, maybe affects his ability to take the shot somewhat. And I don't know. It looks like this could be potentially a showcase fight for Darko if he's able to get the fight finished the way he is looking to, which is by a knockout. And I'm going to bet on that. So I'm betting on the knockout. I think it actually does come in the second round. So I think if it gets to the third round, this becomes Devin Clark's fight. But I think the first 2 rounds, Darko's really dangerous, and I think he is able to catch him and finish him with the second round KO. Second round, as I said. So, we're going to have
disagreement.
And take a look at the odds. Darko is the minus 155 favorite, so just a little more of a favorite than Joel Alvarez. My plus 125 for Devin Clark. So.
I'm happy with that. I mean, your point about Devin Clark being undersized for 205 is definitely true. So if you hit him with the right shot, he is going out. And he was coming forward against Rakic, and it looked like he hurt Rakic at one point, but then you just see Devin Clark drop instantly. I can't remember. Was it?
He dropped Rakic.
Within like 2 seconds. But when Devin Clark got finished, it looked like Devin Clark was hurting him again. But then Devin Clark just dropped.
To be honest, I believe that Rakic caught him with like that back fist.
Yep, that was it. That was it.
And it was. I mean, I don't like calling strikes lucky because he obviously threw the back fist trying to hit him in the face and the chin. But it's kind of a lucky shot. I mean, it is just not a shot you see. It wasn't even a spinning back fist. It was just a back fist, which if you throw it just in the air in front of you, you realize how much power you can get from that kind of strike. You kind of wonder why maybe more fighters don't use it, actually. But it's not a fight you see too often. I couldn't imagine he thought it was going to work as well as it did there.
Yeah,
but
it was really short. I like you say, it wasn't like a full spinning one. I remember that because it was like a very weird variation.
It was like a side hammer fist standing. It's very odd. But also Rakic, I think Rakic, if you put Rakic against Darko, Rakic wipes the floor with him, and obviously different fight, but so maybe Darko, he's able to take those shots from Darko and maybe even hurts him. Maybe he's able to finish him, but I think it's a decision for Devin or a finish for Darko in this fight.
Yeah,
that would be my expectations. I'll lead us into the next fight here between 2 female MMA fighters
who are quite inexperienced.
Yeah. I'll go into it with B Melecki, or Bia Melecki. Bad News Barbie is her nickname. She's 5'11". This is at 145, so we have, I can't believe it, a fight at 145 that doesn't involve Cyborg or or Megan Anderson. A fight with another 2 new 145ers. However, the 145er I'm breaking down, she's a great Muay Thai fighter, but her MMA credentials lacking a little bit. She's a Muay Thai champion from Sweden, and her MMA record is 2-0 with 1 TKO and 1 sub. So, okay. You want to know the combined record of her 2 opponents?
Go on.
0-3. Her last win was over a gal who was 0-0 and got TKO'd in 22 seconds. That was, and then the opponent, that was her first win. Her next win was against an opponent who followed up a 22-second KO loss in her debut with a 30-second KO loss. So I don't know what I can really break down here, to be honest with you. She's a Muay Thai champion. She's used to fighting in Europe. I believe she's fighting a Brazilian.
Mm-hmm.
She's 5'11". Yeah. They both have cool nicknames. I believe your fighter that you're breaking down is Cowboy Xena. I believe
Yep.
that was her nickname. So that's neat. Bad News Barbie's also a cool nickname. So I'm gonna flip a coin here, and I'll let you know after you break down Duda who I picked. So go ahead. You can go into Duda. I have
Okay.
not decision yet on who I'm picking.
Okay.
Hard
Fair
hitting
play.
from the Canadian American guy.
Okay. So Duda, 3-0 as a pro. She's making her UFC debut. You didn't know too much about Malecki. We both know she's a Muay Thai kickboxing champion. I don't know too much about Duda, but what I do know is she has a very good Brazilian camp. She's definitely a 145er from what I've seen from her tape. She is quite a big girl. And I would say she probably hits harder than Melecki. I'd bank on that, at least. But I did see her get stunned in one of her fights. She is a big girl, but she got absolutely stunned in one of her fights. And Melecki is a Muay Thai kickboxing champion. So maybe if she just throws like head kick after head kick after head kick, maybe that's how she gets it done. But just like you, I have no real prediction on this fight. But I'm gonna go with the hometown girl in Malecki. I'm gonna take her to get a decision win.
You know what? I'm taking my opportunity to potentially gain one on your lead of 9. I'll take Santana.
Yeah, that's fair. I have no clue. You have no clue. No one has a clue. If anyone has insight on that fight, then drop a paragraph comment on.
So I went researching and I found like a women's MMA YouTuber who, and I saw he had like a 6-minute video. It was when they announced the Megan Anderson Felicia Spencer fight and this fight. So it's like, okay, sweet. Obviously Megan Anderson Felicia Spencer already happened. I go to his part on the Via Malecki Eduardo Santana fight, and he's like, well, we have another fight at 145 finally. It's a legit matchup. Neither one has too much experience, and that's like all he said. And this was like the women's MMA YouTube channel guy.
Wow.
So yeah, I'll take my opportunity. You're up 9 in the picks right now. I gained 1 from last week somehow, going 6-12. I gained 1, but either way, I'll take the shot here in a fight we have no idea about. Yep. By the way, the odds, the odds are with Santana, -135. I figured they'd be with the hometown Muay Thai girl.
Mm-hmm. But you have no clue why the odds are with her?
No.
No, me neither. Well, the odds are with you, so good luck.
Sweet, I got the favorite. -135 plus 105 for Malecki. Again, you won't get an analysis like this anywhere else on YouTube or anywhere else, I promise you. Maybe your local bar, but probably not. They won't know that Bia Malecki and Eduardo Sanchez are fighting, or Santana are fighting in Stockholm, Sweden, June 1st. They won't know that.
Exactly.
So you'll only find a breakdown like this here on UFC Addicts. So please hit that like button. Thank you. All right.
And we disagree on it, so just do the coin toss. No one knows.
Well, now we've got probably plenty more people rooting for Malecki, since, I won't go into that here, but I'll just, either way, I'm just going to leave that there. So let's go on to the next fight here. You want to lead us off?
Yes. Okay, so we have Nick Hein versus Frank Camacho, and I'll be breaking down Frank Camacho. Comes into this fight 1 win, 3 losses inside the UFC. I was at his fight in North Carolina, which was against Drew Dober. Really, really good fight. Back and forth, trading in the pocket. Frank Camacho has 1 win in his career, which was at lightweight. He's fought all of his other 3 losses at welterweight. He's returning to lightweight. Hopefully he can just pick a division at some point. Frank Camacho has very good judo. Nick Hein has a black belt in judo. I think Frank Camacho is going to be the bigger, stronger man, and I think he's going to be able to clinch with Nick Hein. If Nick Hein's looking to clinch, and uses grappling, I think Frank Camacho will be able to hang there. You look at Nick Hein's last fight, which was against Demir. I was at that fight in Germany. Towards the end of the second and the third round, Demir was really landing some crisp shots on Nick Hein's face, and you could tell his face looked really bad. Frank Camacho is, he's going to look to do that. He's going to look to get in Nick's face, trade in the pocket, and pretty much, kill or be killed. You look at him against Jeff Neal, where he got head kicked and it was brutal, and he was killed in that fight. That's fair enough.
He asked for it too.
He really did. He was trying to. I took him in that fight too. He was trying to pump himself up, and it was making me excited for him. But you see how it finished, and whatever. Frank Camacho is there to kill or be killed. In other words, his only win is at 155. He's fighting at 155 again against a guy who is maybe a little bit more busy with other stuff. I believe he brought out a book at some point, retired from being a police officer in like 2014 or 2015. So yeah, I don't know if Nick Hein still has it at this point. So yeah, I'll take Frank Camacho via TKO in round number 2.
All right, I will be breaking down Nick Sergeant Hein, the 5'6", 35-year-old Tiger Muay Thai, 14-4-1, or 14-4 overall. Most of his wins coming by decision. 4-3. He's currently on a 2-fight losing streak to Davi Ramos and Hadzovic. His best win was his debut against Drew Dober. Nick is really not the most overly impressive guy in any particular area. He's solid in the grappling department. Stand-up could definitely use some work, and being 5'6", he's usually the shorter guy in there. Maybe it's improved a little bit being over at Tiger Muay Thai, but he's able to hang in there with taller opponents throughout his career because being 5'6", and he obviously knows how to win a decision. All 4 of his wins have come by that way in the octagon. I think Nick wants to keep this in the clinch while Frank wants this to be a brawl more in space. I think we could see a more technical version of Frank here, looking to avoid the grappling and takedowns, but honestly could go either way in this one. But I'll give the nod to Camacho. He may be able to get the finish, but I'm going to say decision win for Frank here. So nice. I'll take Camacho by decision. So yeah, I'll usually Camacho here. It's pretty much a pick-up. It is a pick-up, minus 115 each way. Wow, that's fair. Some money going on both sides. Opened with Hein at minus 175. So money has shifted towards Camacho as the week's gone, but currently a pick-em at minus 115 as we record here on Thursday the week before. So odds are going to significantly change before then for these fights, but yeah, 115 as of now. So who do you think that sways towards? I mean, it's obviously swayed towards Frank so far, but I would think it goes back towards Hein. I think people maybe think. I think in a close matchup like this, people favor the grappler. That's fine. Also, him being European, I believe German. So I think those and the method. Was Camacho finished by Neal in his last fight? Yes, against Jeff Neal he was, yeah. So I think a lot of people, as they're doing their research, look at that. It's not just a finish, but a pretty harsh finish. And even though it did happen probably 6 months ago, still, not that Hein has looked overly impressive. I don't know. I think it may stay actually around this. Yeah. To be honest, Hein's on a 2-fight losing streak. He's 36 years old. I mean, this is not a slam dunk for either guy. So I'm not sure how much money will be going on either guy as the week progresses. It's one of those ones that I just have to put in at least 2 parlays. Like, I shouldn't, but Frank Camacho, you're taking at least 2 parlays, so have some nice sleep. Has the ability to finish, and he's way bigger. He's going to be the way bigger guy. So, and they're both going to be desperate for a win. But if Hein is already looking towards retirement, pure speculation on my part. But if he is already looking at retirement, sometimes those fighters who are close to retirement find it a little bit easier to find a way to lose. Maybe than a guy who, if Camacho loses, he's going to be fighting somewhere else, like Bellator or something. So he's fighting to stay in the octagon. So
I think
call
that
it
could
the
low-key be fight of the night. I haven't decided yet, but that could be.
I have about 3 or 4 fights I could put in front of that fight for fight of the night. So, but fair enough. I'll move us on to the next fight, one of which I think could be that fight of the night. And it's between a personal favorite of mine, Stevie Ray, and Leonardo Santos. I actually like both these guys, but I will be breaking down Leonardo Santos here. The 39-year-old now on Nova Union. He is 16-3 overall, 2 TKOs, including one of which coming over Kevin Lee, and 9 submissions. He's 5-0-1 in the UFC. He has a KO of Kevin Lee, as I said, and a submission of Tony Martin amongst those 5 wins. And so he hasn't fought since his split decision win over Adrian Martins in October of 2016. So, yeah, it's been about 2.5 years. Santos definitely known as more of a BJJ guy. Had fought really solid competition in the UFC and was building more of an overall MMA game until his career kind of came to a halt 3 years ago. And I couldn't find a whole lot as to why. It was hard to find a lot of information on it, but he's still fighting out of a decent camp in Nova Union. I think very well he could have been sharpening his skills over the past 3 years, and hopefully he's healed up some injuries maybe. We know his BJJ is still going to be there, and he's facing a guy in Stevie Ray who has made no struggle where he struggles at times. It's with his grappling. I don't see Santos using stand-up more than he needs to. I see him looking to get Ray down, and I see probably a second round rear naked choke for Santos against one of my favorite guys in Ray. So I would love to be incorrect, but I kind of fear that Stevie gets exposed the same way he has in most of his losses, and that's by the submission game. So I'm going to take Santos to rebound. Again, these fights where these guys have 2 to 3 years off, they can go one of two ways. So I'm anticipating this goes the more positive route.
Fair play. Fair breakdown. Okay, so Stevie Ray comes into this fight 6 wins, 3 losses inside the UFC. He's going to be at a height and reach disadvantage, and it's fair to say, like you said, he'll also be at a grappling disadvantage. He does struggle with takedown defense. He gets taken down quite a bit. Not only does he struggle with that, but he struggles to get back to his feet. Having said that, I feel like if your prediction is a round 2 sub, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I feel like if he doesn't get subbed in the first, I feel like he starts to take over. I just feel like he sets a pace on the feet. Whether he's scoring or not, he sets a good pace on the feet. I'm pretty good at predicting Stevie Ray fights. I predicted Felder to TKO him and Cajun to beat him, and I'm pretty good at picking Stevie Ray fights. This guy's a very good grappler. I was interested to know how long he's been off, because I know it's been at least 2 years. But yeah, I don't see why these guys are taking 2.5, 3 years off. Because like you said, it really goes, wow, this guy's back. Or it's,
he was 5-0. He was 5-0 in the UFC.
Yeah, and like you said,
he beat Tony Martin.
Yeah, his stand-up game was coming. It was really coming. So, yeah, like you said, it's sharpening his tool set, or it's going to be, why is he back and looking that bad? So it goes one way or the other. But I just feel like if Stevie, like, this is the effects we have, like with Mark Diakisi and Kevin Lee, for example, RDA recently. When a guy loses or struggles a certain way so much, eventually they have a performance that makes you think, well, he sorted that out. Example being Mark Diakisi against Joe Duffy, and RDA against wrestlers at 170. Both those guys recently had the performance where you look at it and go, they really sorted that out. Now, sometimes it can be sorted for fight by fight, or the next fight they can be exposed in the same way and you're confused, right? I just have this feeling that if Stevie Ray can survive the first round, that he's going to start to take over in this fight. So I'm banking that Stevie Ray is able to avoid putting himself in a bad position on the mat, like getting flattened out or giving up his back, something like that. And hopefully he takes over the fight after the first round, starts to use his kickboxing and pretty much scores from there. So for that reason, I'm going to take one of your favourites here. I'm going to take Stevie Ray via a close decision win.
Wow. I really hope you're right, and I can see that coming true. The odds, I think, definitely were initially in your favor, plus 125 for Stevie Ray to Santos at minus 154. They're now at minus 235 for Santos, plus 200 for Stevie Ray.
That's nice. Okay, yeah. I mean, people are obviously assuming, the issue is going to be the issue here again, and it really could well be. But at the same time, he could really impress us all. So, I'm going to stick with Stevie.
Yeah, I hope you're right. Santos is the favorite in that fight. I'll move us on to. This is like 135.
Yes.
Okay, between Tonya Evinger and Lena Elbow Queen Lansberg. I'll be breaking down Tonya Evinger. The now 37-year-old is 19-6 overall. She's 0-2 in the UFC. She's a cyborg victim, coming to knees in the third round against her. She followed that up by getting pounded out by Aspen Ladd. She hasn't had a win since she rear naked choked Yana Kuznetsova or whatever.
Kunitskaya.
Yeah, that one. That was back in 2016. So she was pretty well rounded. Definitely is a scrapper, not afraid to make a fight dirty.
Mm-hmm.
That's ironically where she shines, but so far the experience and size hasn't really seemed to be benefiting her so far, and she seems to be slowing down as she's entered the UFC. I know Lena hasn't had the best performances either, so it's hard to say, but I think Lena has her best performance inside the octagon here. I think she's able to hurt Evinger, and I'm not sure if she's able to get the finish, but I'll pick Lena Lansberg by decision. But I think she pretty well dominates this fight. I think Tonya maybe I'm off, but I think Tonya maybe gets hurt, and I'm not sure how much she has left at 38 years old at this point.
Fair play. Okay, so Lena Lansberg comes into this fight 2 wins, 3 losses inside the UFC. Her debut against Cyborg, she's also a Cyborg victim. And then she fought Lucy Pudilova in her second fight, which was in London. I was at that fight. And basically both girls are quite similar to each other. You said Lena likes to make it dirty and Tonya likes to make it dirty. Lucy Pudilova likes to make it dirty, and that was just a crazy little war between those two. So yeah, looking at this fight, Lena Lansberg likes to pretty much do what Tonya Evinger does. And you look at Tonya Evinger's last fight against Aspen Ladd, and I remember us saying the only real concern we had for Aspen Ladd, because I think you took Evinger in that fight. Yeah, the only concern I think we had was Evinger just being more experienced, very dirty, and a decent grappler herself, and being a 145er as well in Invicta. We look at Lansberg, where she lost her last fight, which was against Kunitskaya, I believe. Just, the bigger female, the grappling, just being much stronger. Now, I was kind of surprised with Evinger's loss against Aspen Ladd, the way she just dominated her. I just don't know if, I look at that fight and it was quite surprising, but I just think Tonya Evinger is, just another version of Kunitskaya in some ways. She's going to be bigger in this fight. She's going to be stronger. She's also experienced with the grappling. And both girls like to make it dirty. So this could really be a decent female fight. Probably a lot of blood. But I'm gonna stick with Tonya Evinger. I just think Lena Lansberg probably loses the same way than what she did in her last fight. So yeah, Tonya Evinger, more experienced, a strong grappler, and she's probably going to be stronger. So I'll take Tonya Evinger via decision.
Fair enough. I'm not super confident on any of the female fights tonight, but yeah, we'll see. The odds are very much with you. Minus 230 for Tonya Evinger.
Wow.
So yeah,
it's a little deep.
Plus 185 for Lena. So pretty much same price as Santos versus Ray here, but for Evinger, I'm kind of surprised by that.
I am a little surprised because if you remember in Lena's last fight where she lost to Kuniskaya, third round came and Yana wasn't able to grapple anymore and Lena busted her nose bad and it was just disgusting and Yana was basically hanging on for the rest of that round. So it could be another case of that here with Tonya. But that's crazy. So, those odds are a little off.
Yeah, it seems a little off. And then the next fight that was supposed to take place was Savinsky versus Kondosko. And that got canceled, unfortunately. Hopefully, Sergey can get a replacement because I was pretty excited to see him fight. Mm-hmm. That leads us on to the next fight, which is what, at 155?
45.
45? You want to lead us off?
Yes. Okay, so we have Daniel Teymur, the least impressive Teymur brother, versus...
something. Neither one's very impressive.
Yeah, against Sung Bin Jo. And I'll be breaking down this guy. What's his ring name?
The Korean Falcon.
The Korean Great. So yeah, he comes into this fight 9-0 inside his pro career. He's making his UFC debut. And just like you was doing earlier where you was noting his opponent's records, I'm going to go ahead and do that now. He's fought guys 1-0, 3-15, 0-4, 0-0, 0-3, 0-5, 2-3, 20-9, 7-4.
20-9's good.
Yeah, the last two aren't terrible, but apart from the last two, it is very terrible. So, we don't know where this kid's at. I've seen some tape, the tape was basically just showing me he was far better than his opponents. We look at Daniel Teymur, we see where he struggles. He has no grappling. In his first fight in the UFC, good first round, but completely gassed. He has his troubles, and Sung Bin Jo has fought Cans, and now there's two guys fighting each other who probably should be fighting each other. This is a fair matchup for both guys. It's a hard pick because Daniel Teymur has good kickboxing.
He does.
Struggles in some areas. Now, it's such a hard pick because even in his last fight against Chris Fishgold, every moment that fight wasn't in a grappling exchange, Daniel Teymur looked very likely to get a TKO in that fight. He made Chris Fishgold shoot a couple times when he didn't want to shoot. It's either Daniel Teymur just is unimpressive one last time, goes 0-4 in the UFC and gets cut, or it's Daniel Teymur is able to use the kickboxing we know the Teymur brothers have. It's one or the other again. I'm gonna take Daniel Teymur. He's in Sweden. He's in his home country. If you can't kickbox now, you will never kickbox in the UFC. I'm gonna take Daniel Teymur to kickbox his way to a TKO in round number 1. Because that's all I'm giving him. I'm giving him 1 round.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. Wow. I don't mean to give away my pick, but I'm not picking Teymur. He's 5'5", 6-3 in the UFC, 3 TKOs, or 6-3 overall. Sorry, 0-3 in the UFC.
Yes.
He's been subbed in his last 2, outclassed in all 3. He's had basically about 1 good round in each of his fights, though. So his first round is definitely his strongest. Usually, he doesn't have grappling, he doesn't have sub defense, and he doesn't have cardio. So, and he's not particularly tall. So, I think this is a pink slip fight. I think he will receive that pink slip. The Korean Falcon appears to have solid stand-up and good size for the division, and I think this is going to be too much for Teymur. I'm actually going to take a second-round TKO loss for Teymur, so not only does he lose, but he loses, I think, by way of stand-up even. So it really leaves him with no sort of prospects of where he feels he can be successful in the UFC. I think he gets cut. So, yeah, I will take the newcomer, the Korean Falcon, Sung Bin Jo. And,
Nice.
yeah, he opened at minus 265. The money has shifted significantly. He's a minus 165 favorite, plus 135 to Teymur. I feel that's perfectly fine.
Yeah, that should stay there. That sounds about right.
Minus 265 is absurd.
That was hilarious. Minus 265.
That's
Wow.
what it opened at, and it shifted 100.
It
So
shifted real quick. Nice.
that's just sometimes I feel like maybe the MMA odds are just testing it a little bit.
Mhm.
I think sometimes that's why you see. I can't think of a specific example right now, but sometimes you see an example of a guy who's a minus 1,200, and you're like, how is that guy a minus 1,200? Maybe they open at like a minus 300, and the money for some reason keeps shifting that way. I don't know.
Raoni Barcelos recently.
That is one recently I was thinking about, yeah, in which he got an early stoppage in that fight, but he got a stoppage. But I think that Hui Chen could have kept going, and I'm excited to see Hui Chen in his next fight.
Yeah,
but
that first round, he competed, man, and even in the second, when you could see it coming, he never give up. He never once give up. Always got out of the dangerous positions. He was getting beat up in the second round, but no way Barcelos should have been a minus 1,000 or even above that. I think it was.
No, yeah, I agree. So, yeah, we will move on, but we disagree there. So that's 3 straight fights we're disagreeing on. So the Stevie Ray fight.
Yeah, that's 5. So that's 5 so far.
We have 5 disagreements so far.
5, yeah.
Well, yeah, if we're counting B versus Eduardo, but we are. So,
We are.
yeah, that is some hard hitting analysis. The time codes are in the description if you want to go back and listen to that breakdown one more time. I know there was a lot of info on the B Malecki Eduardo Santana fight, so don't worry, you can go back. But we're going to move on to the next fight, which I'll have a lot to break down on too, with Christos Giagos and Damir Hadzovic. I was adding an N to Damir's name before the breakdown. Turns out it's just Hadzovic, not Hadzanovic. So, anyways, thank you for pointing that out before we got on here. So I'm going to put it up again as we got on here. I will be breaking down Christos, the Spartan Giagos. Maybe it's, I believe that's how you pronounce it. But anyways, fighting out of Team Black House. 155. He's 1-1 now in his second stint in the UFC. Grinding out a very workmanlike decision over Hirota, which wasn't the most impressive, but got the job done. I was wrong in that fight. I picked Hirota, so fair enough to Giagos. As I said, he's in his second stint in UFC. For some reason, he led off his second stint with a fight against Oliveira do Bronx, which he got subbed in. Shouldn't have been fighting in that fight in his defense, but at least he was in a better situation against Hirota, and he survived. I think against Hadzovic, Hadzovic was hitting his stride more in his last performance. I look for him to build off that. I know he had a couple losses before his last win there, so it looked like those losses had done some benefits for Damir. So I'll take Damir to build off and get, I'll say, a third round TKO finish over Christos Giagos.
Nice. That was beautiful. Damir Hadzovic comes into this fight, 3 wins, 2 losses inside the UFC. He's been an underdog 4 times out of his 5 fights. So just basically what you were saying towards the end of your breakdown there. Damir Hadzovic has had a tough start in his UFC career, and it looks like it's starting to pay off a little bit. It looks like it. I was at his fight in Germany, where he was once again slight underdog against Nick Hein. And like I said earlier on, come that towards the end of the second, that third round, Damir Hadzovic, his hands look so crisp, So,
Mhm.
he tucks his head real good. He's got nice technique to his hands. And then you point out his last fight, which was against Polo Reyes. He showcased his grappling. He flattened out Polo Reyes and beat him up on the floor. So, it's fair to say the tough start this kid has been given is starting to pay off. This kid is starting to look really good.
Mhm.
So yeah, this is definitely one of my more confident picks for the card. Having
Mhm.
said that, I said Megan Anderson was my most confident last week.
Sure.
Sometimes your most confident pick is just apparently complete garbage, but you've got one every week. And if I had to say my most confident pick, it's probably Damir Hadzovic because he's just looked so good recently. And like you said, you pinpoint Christos, his last fight against Hirota, where he got the win. But, sometimes guys can win and you
Yeah.
don't find it impressive. You find it more unimpressive. And that's
Mhm.
one of those performances that stuck out to me that was an unimpressive win. You get some casuals who are like, oh, but Habib wins and it's unimpressive. He just lays on you. Like, they don't know the definition of an unimpressive win. What Habib does is completely impressive. It's soul taking. It is soul crushing. What Christos, how he got his win in his last fight, it wasn't any of that. It was just a lackluster, like you said, decision. If there was 2 more rounds, he probably would have got knocked out at some point.
Pretty sure
Um,
Hirota retired right after that fight as well.
Yeah, so that just says everything you need to know about.
Sensitive, but I'm pretty sure he did.
Yeah, the paths are very different right now. I feel Damir is on the up massively, and Christos just isn't cutting it, in my opinion. So I'll take Damir Hadzovic via TKO in round number 2.
Fair enough. So, yep, we agree on that one. Stops the disagreement train. Mom and Dad have stopped fighting now. You can come back to the room. Going to the odds here. Minus 200 for Damir. So, again, another heavy, but I agree with this one.
I
Plus
feel it could be
160 for
heavier.
Giagos.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think it could be too. It opened at minus 195, so pretty much it stayed the same.
Yeah.
So, you want to move us into the next fight,
Yeah.
which is
I know you're looking forward to this fight.
Oh, I am and I'm not. It's two of my favorites.
Mhm.
I know I've said my favorite a few times on this fight card, but I have a lot of favorites, okay? So, whatever. Definitely two of my favorites at 145, though.
Yeah. Okay, so we have Makwan Amirkhani versus Chris Fishgold. And I'll be breaking down Chris Fishgold. Comes into this fight 1-1 inside the UFC. You look at his debut against a very good boxer, which it didn't go too well. He hung in there for a little bit, but eventually, the stand-up, it was a big difference. You look at his last fight against Daniel Teymur, where we've basically already gone over that. Chris Fishgold doing what expected, using his grappling, finding a choke. It's a really tough fight to predict. It's a really good fight. I feel like Chris Fishgold. I feel like Amirkhani is probably the best grappler Fishgold has fought, if that makes any sense. And I feel like both guys are equally as good as each other in every area. Like Amirkhani can grapple, so can Chris Fishgold. Chris Fishgold can stand and not, panic too much because he stood with Calvin for pretty much a decent amount of time. And Amirkhani got dropped twice in Liverpool against Jason Knight, so he's not exactly looking to stand. So I feel like this fight's going to be back and forth. I feel like Chris Fishgold is going to be able to grapple, but Amirkhani is a good wrestler himself and definitely a good grappler. It's one of those fights that on paper you're just excited to see it. Like, that is such a hard fight to pick. There's no real decider for me. There's no real pinpoint as to where I can make a pick. But if I had to, I would say, as weird as this sounds, I'd say Amirkhani is going to feel more comfortable in the octagon than Chris Fishgold is going to feel with him. I just feel like Amirkhani's fought a few better guys. He's been in the UFC obviously longer. And I feel like he'd be expected to get a win here a little bit more than Chris Fishgold. So yeah, it's a weird decider for me. You know, you could completely fade me on this one, to be honest. But I'm going to take Amirkhani to get a close decision win.
Fair enough. I pretty much agree with that breakdown completely. I think that this is a really, really good matchup. I think that it's super close. I think that I think that both guys really do match up with one another well. I think the difference could very well come down to gas tank and overall size. Amirkhani is much, much bigger. He is one of the taller guys at 145. He's 5'10", it says, but I think he's closer to 5'11". He did get dropped quite a bit in that fight with Jason Knight. That was just a weird fight. Knight was just kind of throwing a lot of reckless shots and still lost a decision when he knocked his opponent down 3 times in a fight. So that kind of lets me know.
I was very sure Jason Knight won that fight. I was there live, and I was a little shocked, to be honest.
I was actually quite okay with the decision. I agreed with it, actually. I thought that besides those knockdowns, overall, Amirkhani won that fight. Before that fight, he had really looked good in the octagon. He had that really quick finish of Andy Ogo with the flying knee. He had a good rear naked choke finish early on in the fight. His fight with Arnold Allen was extremely close also.
I was also at that one live. That was such a good fight.
Yeah, it was a really good fight. And the other thing, I've felt this way about Amirkhani for a while. I feel like they have a star they have not utilized in Akami or Amirkhani. I think that he really performs well in the octagon, and he performs even better on that mic. He's like an absolute character. I think that he could get a lot of fans behind him. I think that this is somewhat of a showcase fight, coming out fight for him. I think that I am picking him to win. I think this is a very close fight. I've talked mostly about Amirkhani in this breakdown, but I just think the wrestling in the range is going to be what is the difference for Amirkhani. I think he learned a lot about putting himself in positions where he can get outstruck by the shorter guy in Knight, and he'll avoid those against Fishgold, who I think has much better power than Knight. I think if he puts himself in those same positions, he may put himself in a position to get knocked out by Fishgold, who I get most of his wins come by submission. But I think that could be a way that Fishgold is able to win this fight. So I'm going to take Amirkhani to win a close decision, though.
Nice.
So again, I was kind of all over the place on this one, but I think a lot of the issues that Fishgold had against the taller featherweight and Calvin Kattar in his debut, he'll have against Amirkhani.
This is really the matchup that sends you all over the place, though, when you try to break it down. Because this, on paper, that is a great fight. And I think, even in the octagon, man, that's a great fight.
Yeah, it is definitely a good fight. I'm really looking forward to seeing where it goes. And so you want to move us on to the next fight?
Yep. The odds for that one before we move on?
They are heavily, I believe, with Akami. Let me just jump over to it real quick. Sorry about the delay here. No, it's a pick'em. Sorry.
It's a pick'em. Yeah, I mean, it should be.
Each way, and it should be. Yeah, so it opened with Fishgold as the slight favorite, but Amirkhani is now the it's a pick'em. So
wow, fair play.
That could be my fight of the night. I think any of these next 4 fights really could be fight of the night.
Fair play.
This is a really strong main card. So you want to move us into the next one?
Okay, so we have a very decent 205 fight here in Jimmy Manuwa versus Alexander Rakic. and I'll be breaking down my hometown boy, Jimmy Manuwa. Comes into this fight now 6-5 inside the UFC. I was at his last win, which was in London 2.5 years ago. I've predicted Jimmy Manuwa's last 4 fights perfect. He's on a 3-fight losing streak, basically being, knocked out or, beaten up for the second and third round, which was against Jan Blachowicz.
Yeah, go through his last 5 fights.
His last 4 I can take you through, which was his win was against Corey Anderson, which I was at in London.
Very impressive.
And then who did he lose to after that? Volkan Ozedemir.
Yep.
And then he lost to Jan Blachowicz. And then he lost to Thiago Santos.
Yeah, that is known as a murderer's row.
That is.
And by the way, I don't mean to cut you off here, but I'll just go through let me just go through his last 8 fights here. He lost to Gustafsson, he beat Blachowicz, he lost to Rumble Johnson, he beat OSP, he beat Corey Anderson, lost to Volkan, lost to Jan, lost to Thiago Santos.
Yep.
That's his last 8 fights. He has, that is that's a rough run of it since March of 2014.
And a fun little fact, pointing out he's fought Jan Blachowicz twice, right?
Yep.
He beat him in Poland, which is his back garden for Jan, and then Jan beat Jimmy in London. So, yeah. Fun little fact, maybe a third.
Instead of saying you beat him in his backyard, like when you come into someone's home country and beat him, you say, is that saying you beat him in his back garden? Is that a British thing?
Yes.
I've never heard. That's hilarious. I like that way more than beat him in his backyard.
Yeah.
God, he beat him in his back garden. That's way better. Americans / Canadians are so uncivilized. I don't want to say where I'm from for any of our audience, but, anyways. Sorry, back into your breakdown. Yeah. I didn't cut you off, even though I did.
No, that's sweet, bro. That's a fun little fact with Jimmy Manuwa and Jan Blachowicz. So maybe like a trilogy fight somewhere, maybe. But looking at Jimmy Manuwa's losses, right? I feel like he's a very strong, powerful boxer. He has insane knockout power. But I feel he's losing because of how slow he is. When he's coming in that stalk mode and he's that slow, it's predictable. It's not predictable to me. If I was stood in front of Jimmy Manuwa, he'd take my head off. But to these up-and-coming guys like Volkan Ozedemir and Thiago Santos, who's been on an absolute tear, it's predictable. Getting this slow guy coming forward, it pretty much says, I'm going to jab your face for 5 minutes, and after that, I'll throw power punches with you. It's that kind of thing. Rakic is pretty much going to be quicker, most likely longer. And he's pretty much going to jab Jimmy up the first round. I do see Jimmy Manuwa winning, but only winning via TKO. I don't see him getting a decision. If Jimmy Manuwa drops Rakic in the first, he's not just going to keep dropping him. If you get dropped by Jimmy Manuwa, the chances are you're going to sleep. So if Jimmy does hurt him, I do see him finishing. But I just can't take Jimmy Manuwa at this point. Unless you're like a Corey Anderson and it's not predictable to you that he's, stalking me slowly and you don't see that hook coming. It's fair enough. Rakic could be that guy. But what we saw, I saw Rakic in Germany's debut, very impressive. And then against Devin Clark, just impressive. And I remember at one point, I don't know if you remember, Brooks, in that fight against Devin Clark was throwing illegal knees right in front of the ref. And Rakic was just kind of looking at the ref like, oh, okay, I'll just stop it myself then. And it was just like...
He initially tried to play on his 2 hands down. He got
that's it.
A couple of them, and then rather than just stay there and play the key, realized the ref was not going to do his job and adjust. So he also got dropped by Devin Clark in that fight.
Yeah. So that's a different kind of adversity when you have a ref that doesn't know his job and you have to take care of his job. Like, he's fought some good adversity.
Fights Eve Levine refs all the time in Europe, so there's a good chance we're going to have a ref not knowing what he's doing.
Yeah. So I'll take Rakic, TKO, round number 2.
Okay. I will be breaking down Alexander Rakic fighting ATT, the 6'5", 27-year-old, entering his prime. 11-1 overall, 8 TKOs, 3-0 in the UFC, getting his first finish against Devin Clark, who's a decently tough guy at 205. Rakic is mostly known for his stand-up and finishing abilities. I think that his takedowns are also pretty underrated. I think in the Clark fight, he did get caught and dropped at one point, but he's able to recover and finish Clark in the same round. He definitely has quick hands. Finished him with a back fist, not even a spinning back fist, but a back fist in his fight. So definitely the hand speed and overall speed advantage is going to be with Rakic. Manuwa has to outthink him, I think, here. I think he has to not look to actually only depend on the finish. I think he has to believe and hope he can win a decision also. So I'm not sure if he can, but I think the attitude Manuwa has to go into this fight with. I think this is a good matchup, but I'm leaning towards a second round finish for Rakic as well. It's been a tough run of the last 8 fights for Manuwa, and he's accumulated a lot of damage within those. And
how old is he now? Like 39?
39?
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is a dangerous fight for him. He wins this fight, though. I'm very much impressed, but I think if he wins this fight, he's probably getting Jan next for a trilogy fight. But we'll see. I'm going with the odds here. They are slightly with Rakic, and by slightly, they're pretty heavy, actually. Minus 210, plus 170 for Jimmy.
Okay. Yes, it sounds about right. I think if Jimmy does win, it's a TKO, though. I really believe that.
Fair enough. Yeah, so we agree. Back on the agreement here. That's 3 straight we've agreed on, so 5 disagreements so far. And moving into the co-main event of the evening, we have finished off with 3 fights at 205. This is the middle fight, and it's between Volkan Ozedemir and Ilir Latifi. Been having a little bit of discussion about this fight early on in the week with some people being pretty surprised with who the underdog is. So let's break this one down. I will be breaking down Ilir Latifi, the sledgehammer. 5'8", a 205er, so absolute bowling ball. He's 35 years old now. He's 14-6 overall with 7-5 record in the UFC. His last 2 wins coming over OSP and Tyson Pedro. The guy obviously earned the nickname the Sledgehammer. He hits like one. Very hard hitter, crushing top game. Good wrestling, although his wrestling was kind of blanked out by Corey Anderson, who was more athletic, taller, stronger, and a better wrestler in that fight. So if it comes down to the feet where I think Latifi has power, I think Volkan will be able to catch him early and often and get a first-round TKO here for Volkan. But even if it goes to the second or third round, I think Volkan has the ability to grapple. I believe he can last long enough to get the fight back to where he wants it. So I got Volkan here. I've heard a lot of people who seem pretty interested in Latifi here, but I see a lot of ways for Volkan to win, and I think Volkan's grappling is a little bit underrated in this fight. So he's a good defensive grappler. He's going to be the bigger, taller guy. Strength and overall power on the feet will be similar. So I'll take Volkan Ozedemir.
Nice. Okay, so Volkan Ozedemir comes into this fight 3 wins, 3 losses inside the UFC. Not too long ago, this guy had some decent hype around him, and that's pretty much gone fight by fight. He's on a 3-fight losing streak. I was at his last fight, which was in London, and in all fairness, I really don't believe Dominic Reyes won that fight. You could say Volkan Ozedemir was robbed. I really didn't like that judging, and when it happens in your own country, you can't really complain about Brazil too much. But yeah, that judging wasn't the greatest. So yeah, looking at his last fight, I go back earlier to the point I made about Christos, where a guy wins and it's unimpressive. Vice versa, a guy can lose and he can look impressive, and that was a fight Volkan Ozdemir apparently lost, and he looked very impressive in that fight. Very well rounded. His whole game was well rounded that night. So yeah, for me, it pretty much is what Latifi will turn up. Is it the Latifi that's headhunting in round one? And if he doesn't find that shot, round two and round three, the gas is gone and he doesn't look too good? Or is it the Latifi that gets a takedown, makes Volkan Ozdemir work off his back in round one, round two comes, his conditioning's fine, and that kind of guy? It goes one of a few ways, but I think it mainly depends on Latifi. So, yeah, I don't really want to bank on which Latifi turns up. Like I said, I was very impressed with Volkan's last fight, which was a loss, apparently. So, yeah, I'm going to take Volkan Ozdemir to be more well-rounded here. He's, like you said, a very good defensive grappler. So, yeah, Latifi could knock him out in the first, maybe even in the second, depending on how the first round goes for Latifi. But I'm going to take Volkan Ozdemir via decision.
Oh, wow. I was expecting to disagree on that one.
Yeah, it's a tough one. If Latifi comes out and, he's called the sledgehammer for a reason, you said it. If he catches that shot, it's over.
Yeah.
But if he doesn't and he's been headhunted in the first round, it's going to go Volkan's way.
I mean, how many fights has Volkan been finished by strikes in?
I don't believe he has. Has he?
Yeah.
Daniel Cormier on the floor, but...
Right. Yeah, so just the one then?
Yeah, just the one.
Yeah, I mean, and Latifi, I think, if Latifi looks to wrestle a little more, that encourages me. But yeah, that's the one. I think Latifi may look for maybe a submission a little more in this fight. But again, I really think that that Volkan is better on the ground than people realize. So, go to the odds. They opened at minus 200, minus 220 for Volkan, but they've actually shifted quite dramatically. So 100 down to minus 130 for Volkan, plus 100 for Latifi. So Latifi's even at this point, minus 110 on some sites. So a lot of people really believe in Latifi and really not believing in Volkan. I don't quite see it that way, but should be a good one. It is in Sweden, so Latifi's hometown. So
surely not.
Yeah. You want to lead us into the main event? I'm on a 2-fight main event losing streak currently, unfortunately.
I think we're free. Is it free?
Free. Is it 3?
We're both on free. Okay, so main event. We have the King of Sweden, Alexander Gustafsson, versus Anthony Lionheart Smith. It's fair to call him the King of Sweden at the moment, but you could say that has pretty much nearly changed with Jack Hermansson completely stepping up for Sweden. So yeah, main event. Here we go. We have Anthony Smith comes into this fight 7-3 inside the UFC. He's 3-1 at 205, and he's only lost to arguably the best ever against John Jones. Both their last fights were against John Jones. Very dominant performances in both fights for John Jones. Anthony Smith was dominated, but it's fair to say, that kid is Lionheart. He got kneed with a horrible illegal knee, and he continued. He competed. He got dominated, but he competed. He never quit. He was always there. John Jones probably should have finished the fight, but Smith was there for 25 minutes. I really like this main event. Both guys are tall. Both guys are long. Both guys pretty match up well with each other pretty much everywhere. Smith has good boxing. Gustafsson has good boxing. Both guys can grapple. It's a very decent main event. If I had to decide on a factor that's going to be the difference, I'd say Gustafsson probably has better decision making and probably has better movement. I see that mainly being the difference in this fight. I just think Gustafsson's going to strike at the right times and circle at the right times. And I think Anthony Smith is just going to have to make it dirty. And that's pretty much what he has to do in all of his fights. You'd kind of expect it to change a little where Anthony Smith has a fight where he hasn't got to make it dirty. But I just think Gustafsson has very good movement. One of the key fights that I could recall would be against Glover Teixeira. Anthony Smith he's a bit quicker than Teixeira, so maybe he's going to shut the door off a little more. But I think Gustafsson's movement is very good, and I see that being the decider. So I'll take Gustafsson with a fairly dominant decision win.
Okay, I will be breaking down Alexander Gustafsson. Now 32 years old, 6'4", still fighting out of Alliance as far as I could see. 18-5 overall, 11 TKOs, 3 submissions. As you said, he's coming off the loss to Jones, which is only his second fight since 2017. So he's been a little less active over the last few years. Kind of got his sights set in on Jones, and then didn't really follow that up with all that impressive of a performance against him. We know Gus has good stand-up, utilizes his length and movement for the most part. He's been the better grappler in against a lot of his opponents, and I think he can beat most of the opponents in the division with his grappling. I think that with him willing to go back into the octagon against Smith right away, I think that's encouraging. But I also wonder if a lot of that decision making was, it's Sweden, I got to be there. I wonder if he's really mentally prepared to fight a guy like Smith, who I don't think is going into this fight just to compete. I think he really believes he can win. I see this being a stand-up war for 3 rounds and someone going down in one of the main event / championship rounds. So I'll go with Gustafsson to get a 4th round finish of Anthony Smith by TKO. I'd love to see him look to possibly use some grappling. That is a spot where Smith has shown in the past he can be vulnerable against, and I think Gustafsson has some better grappling than he likes to show in a lot of his fights. So, But honestly, I see this being probably a stand-up war, which I still favor Gustafsson. So I'm going with Gustafsson by 4th round TKO.
Nice.
So we do agree. Hopefully that puts a schneid on the 3-fight losing streak.
I'm fairly confident.
I'm not too worried about, not too concerned about this one, but I also will say off the bat, I don't agree with these odds. Minus 315 for Gustafsson.
Minus what?
315.
Wow.
Yeah, plus 245 for Smith. Absolutely, I agree with, if you believe in it, taking a shot with Smith.
That's crazy. I'd say minus 2 the most for Gustafsson.
I'm thrilled to see plus 245 because I'll be ending a lot of my parlays with Anthony Smith by KO.
Wow. Okay.
So I think that if he wins, I think he can win by getting a finish, and I think it would come by strikes.
Yeah,
so,
that would definitely be the route I would cover with Smith on decision. If he wins a decision, then Gustafsson really hasn't turned up on the night, which goes back to your point where you don't know where he mentally is. Stepping in, not as quick as Anthony Smith is stepping in, but it's a quick turnaround for both guys.
Decision against Alexander Gustafsson in Sweden is not the route you're going to try to win this fight.
Yeah,
in my opinion.
Exactly.
So, and I think Smith has the ability to finish. I think he's not going to just be looking to make it 5 rounds here. And so he may put himself in a position where he's trying to get the finish and gets finished. So he's a Lionheart for sure. And if Gustafsson is not 90% ready or better, I think he loses, though. So if his main if his main motivation for taking this fight was it's Sweden, I got to be there, and not realizing he's fighting a guy who just came off fighting John Jones, who's beat a lot of good guys in the division already in his 3 fights. So we'll see. But, I'll take Gustafsson, but I'm not crazy about the price.
Fair play. Fight of the night.
I'll go with Amirkhani versus Fishgold.
Nice. I'll take my earlier prediction. I'll stick with Nick Hein and Frank Camacho to be an absolute war.
That just is shocking to me. I'll tell you how I have. Let's see. I have 1, 2, 3, 4 fights ahead of that fight for fight of the night.
Really?
The last 3 of the night, I think Manuwa Rakic could be great. I think Ozedemir Latifi could be great, and Gustafsson Smith could be great. This is no slight to that fight. It's not. And then I also think Stevie Ray and Leonardo Santos could be great, especially if Ray's able to be successful early on, avoiding the grappling. But fair enough. I really like this card. I know we say that for
such a good card.
Most cards are pretty good, and all things considered with the UFC. And next week, the week after this one, is the Cejudo Moraes fight and the Shevchenko I title fights, along with Tony Ferguson and Don Cerrone.
Oh, wow. That's the next card?
Yeah, Jimmy Rivera, Peter Yan.
Oh, yeah, that's a good card.
My goodness. And also...
Is that Aljamain Sterling and Pedro Munoz?
Yes, sir. That is on the... Ricardo Lamas, Calvin Cater's on the prelims. Your girl Jan is fighting Angela Hill.
That's an easy dub.
Darren Stewart and Bevan Lewis is on the prelim. Oh my goodness!
Do you remember saying for Jody Escobar and Angela Hill, whoever wins this fight, both girls are going to lose their next fight?
Oh yeah.
I mean, Angela Hill's fighting my girl, so you got half of it right.
Chukadigan versus Calderwood. That is a stacked card.
That's a great
stacked card for the play. And also, with that being the pay-per-view, we will also be having, I don't know if it will be a separate video or not, but we'll be adding the Dana White Contender Series is starting on June 15th, I believe. Somewhere around there, maybe June 18th, actually. But either way, we'll be breaking that down on the UFC 238 card. So we'll just either have that be right before or just combine the video. But we'll break down all 5 fights for the Dana White's Contender Series each week of the season this year. So look forward to it. I'm looking forward to this card. Thank you, everybody, for listening. We look to get this one up a little bit earlier this week. We'll see how that goes with regards to the cards staying together. But we appreciate all the comments. Don't forget, with your comment, enter the giveaway as well. You might as well go for the ESPN Pass. As we know, some subreddits are no longer around. If you are so choosing to use those to view your cards. So you could use that ESPN Plus giveaway for a year of it if you win the giveaway. So all it takes is 5 fights, one of which being the main event, and the method of victory and round for those. So get those right and you win the giveaway. But thank you, everybody, for listening. I had 6 dogs here, so hopefully the dogs weren't super Memorial Day weekend here, so it's a busy weekend for my business, but hopefully the background noise wasn't too bad, and thank you all for listening, and we appreciate it. Enjoy the fights, and that's all I got to say about that. Peace.
Yep. Thank you all. Hit the like button, subscribe, and see you again for another stacked card in a week. Peace.